Again, they transport the bulk of goods across the country, but they have to deal with bad road conditions, deadlines, long distances, and the fear of getting hijacked. Tonight, we talk about the challenges truck drivers face daily. Joining us is William Lekgwathi. He is the provincial coordinator for the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union. Ian Lourens is CEO at transport company OneLogix. Busisiwe Gumede from Checkpoint. Very warm welcome to the two of you, and glad you stayed on with us. Mr. Lourens, I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? 41% of accidents are related to fatigue and exhaustion. I mean, that's an extraordinarily high number. It's not right, is it?
It's not right. I mean, I can only talk from our own organisation's perspective. We do everything we can to actually reduce that. So it's clearly an issue that has got to do with the drivers, with the public out there, you know, with our customers. So really a whole lot of stakeholders will find this completely unacceptable.
So what do you mean when you say it's got to do with the drivers, the public? I mean, are you saying that this is something that's out of your hands, that you try to impose laws?
No, the consequence of what you're talking about is felt by many stakeholders. So it's not acceptable to literally everybody.
And how do you deal with this? I mean, it's obviously affecting so many of your members. So what do you suggest?
Thanks, ma'am. I think what we have observed within the industry is that most of the fatigues occurs in terms of the systems that the employers are applying within the industry. So that is why, as unions party to the council, have decided to say, perhaps it will be proper that we increase the minimums. And that includes, of course, subsistence allowance and cross-border, so that we eliminate, because the main contributing factor, madam, is that our members are now exposed to long trips, doing double trips and so forth, in order to accumulate better salaries, if I may put it in that way.
So is that what happens? Is there an incentive to drive longer? You'll get paid for the extra kilometers that you drive, and therefore, well, for many, it's not really a choice, is it?
Yes. No, currently, there are applicable incentives which talk to subsistence allowance and cross-border. But in terms of the current negotiations that we're engaging in, we are trying to improve so that workers at the end of the day can get something that will not expose them to do more trips than what is required in terms of the current arrangement within the collective agreement. Of course, there are limitations, madam, on that.
Okay, what is the company position here? I mean, when does the company step in and say, if you want to drive or not, we're going to take it out of your hands because you clearly are tired and this goes against our rules?
Well, I think maybe I'd just like to make that a point before we get to the specific question you've asked, and that is that, you know, there's an agreement by labour and by the employer bodies as to, and you refer to it as a collective main agreement, basically. And in that agreement, it's agreed that drivers will work for a 90-hour week. And there's a whole host of issues in addition to that. For example, that there will be times during the night that they don't drive. Certain of the collective agreements actually specify which hours you can't drive. Others just talk about the principle, and it's up to the entities involved to agree on what it is. And so, you see, the big issue with driving a truck is not like coming to an office or working on a production line where you start at 8 and you go home at 5. When you drive a truck, you know, if you drive at certainly long distances, is what we're talking about, you know, comes the end of the day, you're still with the truck. And you have to then obviously look after the truck, because that's what is expected of you. But when you're looking after it, it's not deemed to be
not off duty.
It's not, but it's not deemed to be working times, because what the collective main agreement does is it specifies what is working and what is so-called dead time.
Okay, well, I mean, therein is one of the big problems, right? Because you're never off duty, and when you're with your truck, you are in danger too.
I think we really have to question tonight who are the biggest losers. The biggest losers are, in fact, the employees, the truck drivers, the foot soldiers who are doing all the work. On one hand, they feel let down by unions. And increasingly, we're seeing
What, they're not looked after by unions?
Yeah, increasingly we're seeing drivers saying, you know what, we would like to negotiate our own terms because unions are not doing that for us. And we're seeing, especially with these breakaway unions, and especially why it actually came out in the N3 truck driver strike, is that truck drivers are increasingly unhappy with the unions because they're saying that, you know, you're not talking to our employers, you're not representing us properly. And they also feel let down by employers as well. Do they have their interests at heart? If we could say that, for example, a truck driver is supposed to, you know, work for around 15 hours a day, we also have the influx of foreign nationals who are saturating the market. So it's almost a competition where if you don't do the hours, someone else will. Someone else will take the job for you.
And then that problem will never end.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, those safety areas where drivers are supposed to stop and rest and put their feet up, we touched on a little bit earlier, I mean, those are real danger zones, aren't they? Is there anything that companies could do more, the conversation you have with companies, to protect drivers? Is there a navigation system, some electrical device that could alert the driver to any danger?
No, look, protection in terms of the main collective agreement that we have agreed upon as parties to the industry is very clear. But I can tell you, ma'am, without fear, is that this comes from the abuse by the employers. That is the main contributing factor. With regards to the issue that was raised earlier on to say, it sounds like we are not doing what is expected by drivers.
The drivers are saying.
I'm not going to agree with that on the basis that as and when we negotiate at the Central Bargaining Forum, we collect mandate from plant levels until such time mandates are consolidated at national level. These are the issues that are raised by our members on the ground level. I'm not going to comment on areas where people are not associate ourselves with our union, under the auspice of our union, or those who are outside the bargaining council, because we don't know their mandate as we speak.
But it seems like everything needs to change. If you've got a lot of illegal drivers coming over, there's the race for time. I mean, one of your employees says that he was accused of being complicit in a hijacking. I mean, are some of the drivers involved with some of these incidences that you might know of?
Look, it is a fact that some of the drivers are complicit with hijacking. There's no question about it. But let me just hasten to add that I agree with William that what's been highlighted here is abuses of the system. Now, I can't comment on the specific instance on our organisation. But
you'll look into it, I'm sure.
Well, yes, of course I will. But the fact of the matter is that I know that company very well, and they are extremely, extremely fair with their drivers. They move hazardous materials, and they absolutely have to follow the processes absolutely to the T. There's no, because they simply have to because of the nature of the cargo.
So does that mean that the employee is lying then? Is that what you said?
No, we go through a process. We have a very, very clear process. Let's assume there's an incident. Let's say it's an accident or a hijacking or whatever the case might be. We have to investigate. I'm sure you'd agree we have to investigate.
Of course, yes.
Then when we investigate, we have a very set procedure that we go through, and it's extremely fair as to an explanation of the event, corroboration of information, and this sort of thing. And in most cases, I can assure you that we have drive cameras, for example, in our amongst many other things in the units that get driven, the trucks, and we have footage of what happens, so that can corroborate as to what goes on. And
sorry, what happened, very quickly, what happens in the incidents of the female driver who wiped out a truck and she was tired and was found that she was given time beforehand, but she said there's a cumulative issue that happens here. I mean, that's something that you've got to take into account as well. I mean, that might not fit well on paper, but
absolutely. So, okay, so I was just interrupted on the point that I was making, but let me if I can just quickly finish that without dwelling on it for too long. And that is that the processes that one follows in order to deal with issues that you raised are extremely fair. There's a standard procedure that one follows, and it's extremely unlikely that anything unfair would come out of that. In terms of working long hours and not being happy to do that, every single driver has the right to not drive should they feel that they're not up to it. They're tired or whatever the case might be. And if they're forced to drive, they're able to go to the bargaining council and complain to the bargaining council. They can also go to the union. Now, the bargaining council has got the right to come to an organisation like ours with no notice, arrive and say, I want to see driver X's history of driving because I believe you're abusing it. So there are processes, this is the point. There are processes that deal with this to make it fair. And that's why I agree with William, because what we're seeing here are abuses of the process. But an organisation like ours, I can assure you, operates this to the letter of the law because we have to. It's not only because we want to protect our drivers, we want to protect those that are driving on the road together with our drivers, our customers and that sort of thing. We go out of our way to make sure that everything is followed to the T. And there are processes to deal with it.
It must be quite expensive, not only from a human life point of view, but cost to the cargo, to the company.
Of course it is. I mean, with Ningi Dlamini's case, she said to us, or rather the employer said to us, that the damage and everything related to the incident is around 3 million rands. Does that mean that the driver will be rehired? Do you think that a driver like that will be rehired? And those are the things that are not spoken about. If we are going to say that a collective main agreement is this Bible that's going to, sort of stabilize this industry, are all the workers actually in agreement with it? Or are they saying that this is what, this is how the industry should be regulated as well? So I think there are those underlying issues that are not spoken about, but that clearly need to come out.
Yes,
and
there's
that's
ones
the
that
job
sort of fall through the cracks. Those are the biggest problems, aren't they? And also, is there a disparity when it comes to dealing with women drivers and men drivers?
Well, you see, in our environment, we are trying by all means to balance gender, in that empowering women, of course. But with regards to what happened earlier on, I'm feeling so on the basis, I'm not sure whether this woman has associated herself with our unions. If that is the case, we should have known, and obviously we're going to follow the relevant processes.
And obviously trucking is here to stay. I mean, it's incredibly a massive business. Why have we not seen more go over to trains, that sort of cargo? I mean, what's the problem? Where do you come in as a better option?
Look, a lot of cargo does get moved by rail, there's no question. What rail is really geared up to doing is moving commoditized items and not specific things that require specific attention. So a truck has got a lot of flexibility, whereas a train really moves from point A to point B with limited degrees of flexibility around it. And that's really what trucking does. It offers huge flexibility to meet a whole host of demands.
Do you think there should be better security when it comes to drivers? Should there be more drivers assisting that driver? Should there be some sort of police security?
If you look at the East-Wile agreement, there was an introduction of dual drive. So, because our position was to eliminate this type of tiredness and fatigues. But unfortunately, because there's no interest from the employer side, I will say that for now. This matter now is challenged on the basis that it's sitting at arbitration level in terms of interpretation,
Makes sense, doesn't it?
interpretation and application. But of course, that was introduced on the basis that we will then now use two drivers, in that when one becomes exhausted, one will be able to take over. But now they feel that it is an exorbitant exercise from their part.
And also financially, some employers say that you'd have to share the salary, which is not feasible. And another way or another issue is that employers now increasingly implementing or implanting CCTV or rather cameras inside these trucks. And the question is, I mean, isn't that a violation of privacy? And that's the question that truck drivers are asking, is that, okay, well, of course there is, and there should be an opportunity for these employers to track their cars, or rather their trucks or vehicles, but it's also a violation, that's what they feel, to a certain...
Perhaps let me come in there, because I've exposed to that, and in fact, there are many companies, that we have dealt with, in terms of implementing the drive cam. Because we saw it that this is not solely to monitor the truck, but a true violation of women's dignity. That is why we've rejected it at all costs in most of the affiliated companies where we are organized.
But it is
What,
happening.
Lourens?
Can I-
Gumede, thank you very much. Sorry, we have run out of time. I really appreciate it, though. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Checkpoint producer there, thank you very much for that. It was a great show. Up next, the latest from Zimbabwe as the ballots are being counted. Tonight, we are live in Bulawayo. That's next.